Hey, everybody, Dave Hagan here. People are still quitting their jobs right and left. The Great Resignation. Nick and I are going to talk about this. We have more thoughts. That's today on the Financial Wellness Podcast.
Welcome to the Financial Wellness Podcast, Dave's weekly message to keep you on your path to the financial success. Here is your host, financial problem solver and talk show host, Dave Hagan.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of the Financial Wellness Podcast, or the TFWP, as we like to talk about it here. We're coming to you today from Woodland Hills, California, San Diego, California, and beautiful downtown Van Nuys, California. With me today, Nick. Nick, how you doing?
Good, Dave. How are you?
Good, good. Hey, big news I hear from Nick. Nick got himself a job. A few weeks ago, we were talking about the fact that you passed the bar exam, and I was kidding you about, hey, now you got to go out and find a job, because I know law jobs can be pretty hard to find. And here you go. 2-3 weeks later, and you got yourself a job, but cream rises to the top. So congratulations, Mr. Nick. How you doing?
Thank you. Yeah, you can now call me an associate attorney.
There you go. There you go. Did they give you your business cards yet?
Not yet, but once I do, I will give them to you, and you can give them to all your friends, Dave.
I like it. I like it. They put you on the letterhead yet?
I am on the letterhead, and I'm also practicing in California state court and federal court.
Nicely played. Now, did you get admitted in federal court yet? You got to go down there and do all that stuff. You got to promise to tell the truth and follow the law and all that stuff.
I am.
Nicely played. Nicely played. I remember back when I had started, it was a big adjustment because I'd been in law school, and you have a little more control over your schedule. Then you have no control over your schedule while you're studying for that little quiz. And then you got to go out and you got to start working. You got to start grinding that 9-to-5er. What's that like? Are you adapting?
I wish it was a 9-to-5. That would be nice.
Well, I mean, law hours are usually longer, but yeah. What's that like?
It's a lot, Dave. I wish I was back in law school. No, I'm kidding.
No, you don't. No, you don't.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the first time where it's a really tough challenge.
Yeah. Well, I mean, going back to work and working full time is a grind, man. And especially in law, it's a grind because it consumes your head all day long if you're doing it right. So, it'll take a while to build up that stamina and hang in there. But this is something to remember when you're looking at your big picture, your long-term career goal. Do you want to open a law firm? Do you want to make partner at this firm? Do you want to go into something else? Do you want to make a lot of money on a podcast and just do this for a living? It gives you a lot of things to think about, right?
I see what you did there, Dave.
I know, put a little thing in there, but I got to tell you, on the TFWP, we don't have a lot of sponsors. So everyone knows, one, we're not being paid by anyone to affect our comments or our opinions, but we ain't getting rich on this yet. Maybe someday.
I see what you're doing, Dave. I see what you're doing.
All right, let's dive into today's topic. We're still seeing a lot of articles on the internet, even in the paper, about the Great Resignation. Heck, there was a piece on 60 Minutes a couple weeks ago about the Great Resignation. And I, for one, am absolutely fascinated and captivated by this. So I want to talk about this more. To recap, vast numbers of people have been quitting their jobs the last 3 or 4 months, and everyone's going, what gives? Why are all these people quitting? The people that are quitting are primarily in food service and hospitality. So one might think that, this is the lower income part of the spectrum, but people all up and down the spectrum are quitting their jobs in other fields as well. So why are people quitting in such numbers? A few months ago, we talked about this and we thought people were quitting because they were still living on their government benefits through coronavirus. Some people were doing actually fairly well. In fact, they were doing better on government benefits than they were working. But that might have been part of it several months ago. But these benefits are starting to run out and something's still going on. A few months ago, when we talked about this, we thought that maybe people were reevaluating their lives based upon their COVID experience. Well, I think this might be true, especially for people who used to, commute a lot. People are going, wow, I could have died during COVID. Remember, we were all hanging out in our house. We were all avoiding each other. The worst part was there was no sports on TV, live sports. We were all watching reruns of Super Bowls and stuff. And I remember when SNL came out the first time back on the air, and they were doing it by way of video clips. And Tom Hanks came out and he says, "Hey, it's going to be okay." And I remember when that episode finished, I thought, God, yeah, we're going to get through this. But I think it's caused people to really evaluate their lives. And a few months ago we said, hey, people are quitting to move up, to make more. And I think this is true. Remember, we spoke with our resident millennial Amanda a few months ago, and she didn't quit her job, but she stopped waiting to be called back, and she went out and got a better paying job. I think that people are looking to move up. But what else is going on out there? I think there's more to it. And I've been, kind of following this on the internet and various periodicals. I find this just fascinating. There was an opinion piece in the New York Times last week, and it talked about the Great Renegotiation, not the Great Resignation, which everybody is kind of the tag put on it. But the New York Times talked about it as the Great Renegotiation. And this may be part of it. People simply don't want to work for what they were getting paid before. And if they don't, okay, I'm fine with that, especially on the lower spectrum of the pay. It turns out that maybe crappy jobs don't necessarily equate to crappy pay anymore. People are going, hey, you want me to go out and shovel that stuff? Well, it's going to take a little more than minimum wage. And I think that's great. I think the true cost of labor, what people will feel comfortable making to do a crappy job, should be included in the cost of goods and services. So maybe that's part of it. I, for one, am happy to see that, although we're in a time where inflation is something that's being talked about. And certainly the higher cost of labor will lead to the higher cost of goods, higher cost of labor leading up to the higher cost of goods, and causes the economy to start to heat up. And now you've got the Fed increasing interest rates. So it's interesting to see how these things are all interrelated to each other. But I'm glad to see people working for something closer to what they think the true cost of their labor is. This past week, I saw something that was written by Ariana Huffington. And it was about people rethinking their work-life balance. And we've talked about this before on the podcast. And, she said that maybe we're going to have to rename that and call it the life-work balance. I've heard people say words matter, and I think that they do. And this may very well be true, that people are looking at this, thinking about this. We're already going down the path with the millennial and Gen X generations, and they're talking about their life balance and what they want to do. They're rethinking how they're spending their money. They're rethinking whether they want to own real estate. They're rethinking how they interact with their job. And I think that maybe, the coronavirus perspective has brought this to the fore. I think people are sitting at home or we're sitting at home and thinking, wow, what if I die from the plague? It was a pretty brutal time. I lost several people that I knew. Nick, did you lose people that you knew?
Fortunately, no, Dave.
Oh, God, I'm
I
so
know
happy.
I know people that have, and it's so traumatic. I'm just fortunate that I'm not one of those people.
Good for you. Good for you. Happy to hear that. I think part of this discussion too is people wanting to work from home. It turns out that Zoom in many instances works. I mean, one of the reasons that employers didn't want people to work at home is because they thought they would just be sitting around, having a little party all day long. And it turns out that for many jobs, not all jobs, but for many jobs, that's not necessarily the case. In fact, remember we did a podcast, Nick, on when people show up to the office, how many hours are they actually productive? Because
Right.
people go to the water cooler, they go to the bathroom, they drive in, they talk to people. Turns out a lot of them are looking for other jobs on social media. And I forget what the exact number was, but it was some insane number, like out of 8 hours that people at the job, they're productive 3 hours. Well, anyone
Yeah,
can be productive 3 hours at home,
it,
right?
it's wild.
Yeah. No, it was crazy. I always suspected that there was some of that going on. I never expected that it could be quite that crazy. So I don't know. Things are changing out there. It's kind of interesting to watch, and it looks like we've substantially made it through the Corona thing. Although we've had another wave just recently, and it looks like perhaps this thing could be with us for potentially forever as some kind of a flu or something, some kind of a thing that we're going to need to monitor and keep track of. But um, gosh, there are some silver linings, if you will. People have reevaluated their life. People have thought about the interplay between their life and their work. Maybe work isn't going to be such an important part of our psyche on a go forward basis.
Except, Dave,
Yeah.
I have, you know, here in San Diego, I have some friends that are teachers, and you know, many teachers, at least down here, and I think maybe state or nationwide, have some trepidation or have some anxiety or fear about going to work and to be around kids. And, some of them have caught, the virus, and they're really second guessing whether they want to be a teacher anymore. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out in the future.
Well, I mean, I think you're right. My experience has been that by and large, the vast majority of teachers are teachers because they take great joy and pride at bringing along a generation. They're not in it to make the money, although there are some really nice things to being teacher, like pensions and time off. But the vast majority of them are just totally excited about teaching kids and bringing kids along. And yet, um, are you gonna risk your health? That's a tough thing. And everybody's got their own level of comfort. We had three couples that were going to go to dinner a couple of weeks ago, and we decided to cancel it because one of us had been exposed, even though he had tested negative. They just didn't want to take that risk. Yet I know one of those couples was at the Laker game the night before. So everybody has their own level of, own level of comfort. It's going to have to make their own decision. But yeah, I mean, it's really interesting to watch, what's going on out there. Now, that being said, I think we've come to the understanding that a completely online experience is not good for kids. However, we may not be able to go back to the full time in the school just because the teachers may not want to teach. Maybe there's something out there, some kind of hybrid that's actually better than being at school full time. I don't know, just a thought.
Well, if I can go back, I don't know, 15 years, I would say so.
Yeah.
Hopefully there was some type of home instruction
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
school instruction.
I remember a senior in high school sitting in a room and it was a cooled room and the lights were dimmed and the guy had an overhead and he would write on a clear piece of plastic and he would say, now this is the date that World War II started. This is the date that it ended. This is the date. And we were all writing it down. And the idea was, just regurgitate it on the test and get the A. I mean, that's really all I was interested in. I really wasn't a deep thinker then. And yeah, that was great. But I've often thought that if I was a history teacher now, man, I'd be using all sorts of videos, sometimes in class, some of these history channel things, sometimes YouTube stuff, because there's some interesting theories about life and history out there. Um, so it could be homework assignment, it could be in work, in school, work. But I think that some kind of blend would be really interesting, and I think it'd be way more vivid and way more easier to understand and promote perhaps more critical thinking among the students. So hopefully they can, come to something that's bigger and better rather than just one-on-one. I mean, really, at the end of the day, think about this: one teacher talking to 30 students and them writing it down. That's kind of an old passe model. Now there can be computers and videos and audios and all sorts of other kinds of things that the teacher can bring along the kids in terms of critical thinking and really living and breathing, the topic that they're trying to convey. So hopefully they'll come up with something. But yeah, if I was a teacher, especially if I was a teacher where your classes cycle. I mean, if you're in, elementary, you got 30 kids. Okay, that's one thing. That's a concern. But if you've got six classes of 30 kids coming in, now you're seeing some pretty big exposure.
Right.
But what an opportunity to do something better. I remember when I was in junior high school, they were cutting back the budget and they were going from 6 classes a day to 5. And what that was going to do is going to cut out all the industrial arts, the stuff that I really liked: wood shop, electric shop, drafting, all that kind of stuff. And I was at a school where they prided themselves on that, and the other stuff. I mean, band, and I mean, a lot of the extracurriculars were going to be that 6th period that was going to go away. And we were in school from, I don't know, basically 9 to 3. And the teachers got together and they said, we don't want to give that up. What if we double the length of the classroom and then have only 3 classes a day, A schedule, B schedule? And they said, if we do that, we could actually get out at 1:30 or 2. So the teachers will get out a little earlier. In exchange, we would still have 6 periods and we would be able to keep these extracurricular classes. And we did it. And I thought it worked out really well. What a truly creative way to find a solution, and really win-win, I thought, at that point. I don't know whether they're still doing that anymore, but my hat's off to the people that came up with that. I thought that was, that was pretty cool.
Oh yeah, but going back real quick to
Yeah.
how the virus is gonna kind of change how we communicate with others, and the job occupations, and a lot of people, we've discussed this before. The hybrid work week. How much are people going to go into the office versus work from home?
Yeah.
I think only the future will tell.
Yeah. Hey, with your new job, has there been any discussion about you working from home?
The answer is no. It's a
Okay.
very small firm.
Okay.
However, for other jobs that I applied to and then I got offers from, many of them offered a hybrid work week, so long as the hours were billed and I did my job sufficiently.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we've talked about this in past episodes. I know lawyers that, had big corner offices. They showed up, blah, 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 blah. They had all sorts of associates running around doing their bidding. And they're saying to me, I'm not going back 5 days. I may go back 3 days, 4 days. And by the way, I don't need the big corner office. Maybe I'll share that office with one of the other partners because I'm not there. And I'll do some stuff from the kitchen table, or I've built a little studio at home, or I've built a little, office at home. And I'm just not going to drive. Yeah, I'm just not going to do that anymore. I've complained for years about traffic and how unproductive that time was and how life shortening it was. And, now you've got Elon talking about how traffic, drains your soul. And you've got people saying, I'm not going to spend that much time on the road. And I think things have changed. People are looking at the length of their day, the total length of their day, saying, I don't want to do that anymore. There's some days I can be more productive, be more energetic, be more engaged by doing this stuff at home. A lot of listeners may remember that I'm still practicing law. I've got a small practice that I still maintain, and I haven't been in court in 2-3 years, driving all the way to court, clearing security, talking with all the attorneys for a 2-minute appearance in front of a judge. Haven't done it, and I get on a Zoom call, and they call the case, done, done, done. I can bill the client, maybe half an hour to get ready to sit there and wait and then have my turn called, as opposed to an hour to court, an hour back, and this and that, and hurry up and wait. It's so much more efficient. Back in the day when I was a bankruptcy trustee, there would be 15 people and their lawyers showing up every hour, and we'd do that for 6 or 7, sometimes 8 hours in a row. And you think of all those people coming in, all the gasoline, all the time, all the whatever. Right now they're doing it by Zoom. I hope they continue to do it by Zoom. People can jump in, jump out. I've seen people do it, from their car while they're driving somewhere. They're not supposed to do that. They really should put their full concentration into it. But it's so much more efficient. It's just stunning to me, just absolutely stunning how much gas was burned, how much pollution was created, how much time was wasted. Think of this, Nick, back when the corona hit, we just shut it down for a while. We were just, we just shut it down. And our engineer would text me and say, hey, it's pretty safe to come back in, come on back in. I'm not going back in. I'm not going out of the house. I'm hanging out here for a while. I don't know what's going on out there. We didn't know. We were afraid. I was afraid. We just didn't know. And then our engineer says, well, you can, we could do it by Zoom. No, I'm not going to do it by Zoom. We're pros. We go to the studio. We do the manly stuff and go to the studio. And then as it started to drag out, I said, well, let's run a test. Our engineer said, let's do a test. And it works. I can't see us going back to the studio. No
shot, Dave. Shot, Dave. We're not going to do it.
Yeah.
We're not going to do it. From what was that one movie? I think Wolf of Wall Street. We're not going to do it. We're not going to do it.
Yeah. And the cool thing is, if we were doing it live, we wouldn't be able to bring you in because you live down in San Diego. We have done this show remotely from Bakersfield, from Seattle, from a number of places. And I think it allows us to be much more creative, put out a better product. We can do it in a shorter period of time. And I don't ever see us going back. So amazing stuff. And there has been a bit of a silver lining, if you will. Of course, there's been tremendous hardship, a tremendous number of people that have died, et cetera, et cetera. But if you're trying to find a silver cloud or a silver lining in a cloud, I think that this would be one of them. And frankly, I think the Great Resignation or the Great Renegotiation or the Great Evaluation of work and life has been a positive part of that. So I think that's a wrap. We'll talk about this again, I'm sure, because this whole topic, all of these issues that attach to it are changing around us, but we'll come back to that. But that's a wrap. This is Dave Hagan, and you are listening to the Financial Wellness Podcast.
You've been listening to the Financial Wellness Podcast, Dave's weekly message to keep you on your path to financial success. If you have a question that you would like Dave to answer on the podcast, go to thefinancialwellnesspodcast.com. You can leave an audio message with one click of a button or type your message into the question box. Either way, it's sent right to Dave's phone. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you receive the new episode notifications. Let's listen in now as Dave answers some emails.
Nick, you got a quick one for me?
I do. It's from Sheila, and Sheila asks, should I use a money manager for my savings account?
Interesting. Here's my thought, Sheila. I really can't say because I don't know you and your life circumstance. And all of the things that you're doing. I don't know your interest in investing. I don't know your interest in spending time learning about how to invest. I don't know the size of your savings, et cetera, et cetera. But I think this is a fascinating topic, and we're going to spend a couple of podcasts in the coming weeks on this. I want to spend some time talking about who are your advisors, and then a podcast on should I have my money professionally managed? For those of you that don't know, there's lots of places out there where you can turn over your money to them and they will invest it for you. And then every year you come back and say, well, what'd you make me? Up or down or sideways, or what's going on there? So, I think that this is a topic that people should look at. It's not something that I really thought about, when I was coming up, and I wish I'd thought about it more when I was coming up. But that's a whole podcast. You don't have someone manage your dough, do you?
I don't, Dave.
No. I mean, you're kind of a student of the topic. That's one of the reasons why it's so interesting to have you on the podcast. So you probably do your own. Now, that being said, you might do some things that are a little more risky than I would feel comfortable, but you're not out there on a limb. You're not doing crazy stuff, and you're doing well.
Yeah. And, maybe, just maybe, if I had more money invested, possibly I can consider a money manager. But as of right now, especially with student loans, and if Biden doesn't wipe them away, or another future president,
nor should he. Sorry.
That's another episode.
That's a whole nother episode. A whole nother discussion.
But for right now, I don't have much to play with.
Right.
And so I feel like I don't need to pay a fee to have someone watch my money.
Yeah. For our listeners, money managers, I don't know, they'll charge maybe a point a year. And the thought is they can do that much better in the market. And so the point that you pay them is nothing compared to, the extra money that they get you. But there's other issues involved, like the amount, how much risk you're willing to take, how far along are you in your plan, your life financial wellness plan, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, tune in, Sheila, because we're going to spend some time the next couple of weeks. I can think of at least 2 episodes, where I want to get on my high horse and talk about that a little bit. But I think it'll be beneficial for our listeners as well. Well, I think that's a wrap. Thanks to Sheila for the email. Thanks everyone for listening. Most importantly, thanks to Nic for joining us. Always good to have you here.
Thanks, Dave. And thank you, Sheila, for chiming in.
You got it. All right, everybody. We'll talk to you next week. This is Dave Hagan, and you've been listening to the Financial Wellness Podcast.
You've been listening to the Financial Wellness Podcast, Dave's weekly message to keep you on your path to financial success. If you have a question that you would like Dave to answer on the podcast, go to thefinancialwellnesspodcast.com. You can leave an audio message with one click of a button, or type your message into the question box. Either way, it's sent right to Dave's phone. Remember, Dave will randomly draw from the submitted questions and pick the winner of a free 1-hour personal conversation with Dave to help you achieve your financial goals. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you receive the new episode notifications, or share the podcast via the app with your family and friends. This is your announcer, Nic Appel, wishing you every financial success.